So hi, Rice Robotics. So, what's your name today?
So I'm Yang. I am sorry, give me a second. All right, let me try that again. So I'm Yang. I am an electrical and computer engineering major at Rice, and I'm a freshman.
Okay, that's cool. So I'm Shreya. I'm our team's business captain, and this is Arya.
This is Arya, so I'm the code and outreach advisor for this team.
Okay, so today we're just going to be asking you a few questions about like your team's general history, some mechanical code questions, just how your team functions in general. So, could you tell us a bit about your team's history?
So my team in high school, at least, was Team 5160, the Chargers, for first robotics competition, FRC, not FTC. We started in probably about, I think, 2014 or 2015, and we were a pretty small team. We kind of just functioned with a couple mentors, mostly student-led things, and we figured things out ourselves a lot. And in terms of Rice Robotics, I'm part of the BattleBots team, and we're actually quite new. We're only about a year old. This past semester, we had a lot of people split into doing something called a plastic ant, which is a 1 pound PLA made not P, yeah PLA made combat robot, and it was made to do combat with other robots, hence the BattleBots name. And we also made our own little internal competition.
Okay, that's really cool. So I heard that your robot was PLA made. So how do you guys track like your printing schedule and make sure things are printed on time?
So in terms of scheduling, we basically just figured out when our competitions were going to be, and we tried to create some sort of timeline. So obviously we have our CADing and design, which pretty much everybody is was going to learn in the club. And then we had to do electronics and testing after that. But a lot of the emphasis was on our CAD design. So we made sure to have our before the competition, we wanted to have everything design wise more or less finished 2 weeks beforehand. So that way our so the facility we use is called the ODEC, or the Oshman Engineering Design Kitchen, and there's just a group of printers that is available to everyone at Rice. So you basically kind of just have to get lucky and make sure there's a printer that's open. So that's how we kind of had our timeline to make sure that everybody had time to make extra parts and to assemble everything and make sure everything was in way.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty cool. Um, so what was one of the biggest challenges your team faced while doing this?
I think one of the main things was that since these clubs are pretty low commitment, there's some people who have a lot of other things to do and aren't necessarily able to come a lot. So there's sometimes problems with catching people up, and also the fact that the printers are available to the public, well, at least the public in terms of Rice itself, means that sometimes printers are all taken up. And so one of the problems that we had and I had was just finding times to come in and get things printed, and also sometimes prints don't go perfectly. Some printers stop working or your print just fails. So that was a big thing, which is why we made sure to give ourselves a lot of spare time in terms of like scheduling to competitions.
Mhm. So with this printer situation, I'm sure there have been like a time or two where you guys have had to like rush whatever you're doing at the end or something or fix up your schedule a bit. So how do you make time for testing?
So to make time for testing, we once again we go back to the timeline part where we have these like deadlines for when we want some your design to be completed, because we have a design review, then have our electrics be completed, because as you said, there's like the printers that kind of run out, right? There's only a certain amount of printers and not everybody can use them at the same time. So what we do is we make sure that everybody is like kind of in the same boat in terms of how completed their things are. And then at that point you kind of just got to get lucky.
Mm.
When it
Um,
comes to like the code side of building such robots since they're so small, do you guys have any sensors or so on or any automated like functions of it?
There's not really a lot of code in terms of BattleBots. It's more transmitter receiver things where we had to find transmitters and receivers, obviously, put them in our robot. and then we'd have to wire them up correctly. So this was more of an electrical side, but other sub teams definitely do a lot more with code.
So you did mention wiring. What are some wiring techniques your team uses? And like do you plan how you're going to wire your robot beforehand, or do you guys kind of just wing it?
We have to make sure that we have enough space and weight savings required for our wiring because obviously wires take up space. They have certain stiffnesses, so if you're out of one certain type of wire, you're going to need to give a little bit of extra space in your design to make sure that it doesn't bend and break. And then in terms of wiring techniques, there's solder. There's a lot of soldering, and this includes not only wire to wire, but also wire to certain pads because of certain electrical components we have. And then after that, it's just like heat shrink, which you put on. I don't know if that's necessarily an electrical wiring technique, but it does have to do with it.
Okay. Yeah, so you guys like actually solder the wires together like the
Yeah. And also there's
okay.
connectors that we buy and we have to solder to them as well.
Hmm. Okay, yeah. That's pretty cool. So how does so I'm not sure, but does your team do like any outreach maybe?
We don't really do much outreach other than trying to join competitions. And recently, our BattleBot sub team has been working on hosting competitions that other universities and people can come to as well. But since we're pretty new, we're kind of at the very beginning part of that.
Hmm, okay. Um, could you describe like your design process for your robot like a bit more in depth?
So for me specifically, starting out, you have a BattleBot and it has to meet certain criteria. And there are certain designs that you already know will do well. Like there's certain archetypes rather. There's horizontal spinners, vertical spinners, flippers, wedges, things like that. And so I came up with the idea of a horizontal spinner because I thought it'd be pretty easy to implement and also pretty effective and wouldn't be too harsh in terms of gyroscopic forces, which something like a vertical spinner might be privy to. And after that, I essentially just came up with something that I thought would meet the weight requirements and have a spinner that was both heavy enough and large enough that I thought would inflict enough damage onto other robots, and then kind of built around that.
So how does your team balance innovation and practicality in your design?
So obviously we have certain archetypes that work well, and we want people to stay within those bounds in terms of practicality because it's at this point the I suppose there's not necessarily a design challenge for a certain design challenge like there is in FTC or FRC with BattleBots. So the archetypes are kind of already mapped out for you, but the innovation comes in how you utilize that or how you specifically create BattleBots with certain archetypes. Like for example, there was one person who made a bot with a very large vertical spinner and a very small body, and it was definitely very innovative and it did end up winning a few matches. So it did pretty well and it wasn't exactly the I guess vertical spinner robot you'd imagine just off the top of your head. So we're pretty flexible in terms of make sure in your design review that these things are robust enough and that it fits a certain archetype, but past that you kind of have the freedom to do what you want.
So, what are some of the other branches that you mentioned in Rice Robotics?
The other branches that I am not a part of are R&D, research and development, and Rover. Uh,
Like talk.
what?
If they have like general questions, we can all now like sit and they can
Yeah.
ask us stuff both about like other branches and then also like. If they have specific questions about FRC or FTC related things.
Or like after FRC.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
can like.
For FTC.
Get like the FTC.
Okay. Yeah. I guess if you have any general questions you guys want to ask him, we can just all come together and do that.
So, how did like First Robotics and what you learned and developed, the skills you developed, like really help you in college or out of outside the competition?
Should I introduce myself?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Tony Morales. I was part of Team 5895 Petty Robotics in the Mid-Atlantic District. So how robotics helped me prepare for like aspects outside of robotics. Well, I was head of like marketing, finance, and like strategy. So a lot of what I like implement now that I could take away from robotics would be like outreach to like when I, for example, had to draft like emails to my lab and I had to like present myself and like go through these rounds of interviews where it was like, okay, you're an undergrad researcher who wants to work here. Like, what do you offer? What experiences you offer? And like, I'm a bioengineering major, so a lot of what I did in robotics back then, I could still apply to my major now, even though I'm like on a pre-med track. So I think it really helps with like talking to like various kinds of people and like just putting yourself out there and like being involved in communities. So that's one thing I could take away. And then I mean robotics itself, like it's very time consuming and stuff. So you kind of learn how to balance like your time in between like academics and like one very like robotics, like don't one very time consuming activity. So I think it also helped with like how to balance out like my personal life and my academic life.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you were like marketing captain of your team, I believe. So I know FTC and FRC in general, they do need a lot of money to build the robot and everything. So were there any ways your team acquired this money?
It's literally just cold emailing sponsors. Like in the real world, you're also going to realize like all these labs and all these companies, they all they do is just pitch to each other like, hey, I got this really cool product, or hey, I got this service that could help you. Like you would have to pay this and this and this, but we can give you guys discounts. So like the way I would like manage my marketing team is just get them to cold email all of our sponsors and like just keep reaching out until like eventually they give you a response because that's really all you can do. So like our team of like out of school sponsors alone raised like 40, 50K a year.
Whoa.
And we were also sponsored by a machine shop like in a neighboring town that would make all of our like steel parts. If we ever needed carbon fiber, we could also get that too. So yeah.
So, our team has tried cold emailing in the past. I know a lot of other first teams in our area have as well. And we have been like somewhat unsuccessful at it. So are there any tips you recommend in writing these cold emails?
Let me ask you a question first. Which area of first are you in, like districts wise?
Um, we're in NorCal and we do FTC.
NorCal. Okay, okay. Well, the way I did it anyways is I just started a large first sponsor sheet because usually you can like historically map out which sponsors give you money depending if you're like in an area. So for example, what 1114 and like a couple teams in Michigan do is that because they're close to like one of the car dealership brands, they just get sponsored by them. I think it's Nissan, Ford, and like a couple others, but like you can start off there. Like there are sponsors that will just give you money for being like within like a certain miles from their like headquarters station at that area. Another tip is that grants also exist. You can also try doing like grants to Boeing or grants to Haas because I know both of them do like FTC and FRC sponsorships. Yeah, grants also help, and I mean you just keep going at it like you could send up to 30 emails and you might only get 3 responses, and that's fine. Like it's the same deal if like once you're a college undergrad and you're trying to email for like jobs in the summer internships, like some of them are just never gonna respond to you, and that's okay.
Hmm. Okay. Um, give me 1 second.
So
Okay.
I'll just
Yeah,
ask another
sorry.
one.
You can go ahead.
Um, how is the team planning, whether it's college robotics, whether it's FTC or FRC, like before a season? What does like some steps you guys do to like prepare for a season?
Um, I think, I guess to introduce, I'm Anika. I was on the same team as Reading, FRC 5160. We're from North Carolina. And then here I'm on the Rice Robotics team. I'm on the Rover sub team. Um, I think particularly with the FRC team, before the season started, something we would do, our coach had a lot of fun doing this, is kind of thinking about what the game might be and kind of preparing in that sense. Looking at past games, you can kind of tell almost what they might use in the next game. I'm not exactly sure how similar it is in FTC, but at least in FRC, they tend to alternate between like picking and placing games or shooting games. they tend to alternate between like different types of game pieces. If they use a ball one year, they're not going to have a ball the next year. So what we would do is we'd think about what the game was the last year, and in our pregame season, we'd make something completely different from that. Our priorities were probably like teaching new people is a big priority, introducing them. So having kind of an area where you keep all of your knowledge from your team that you have, all of the lessons you've learned that you can pull out and teach new people really fast. That's really helpful. In college robotics teams and all college like clubs especially, people can come and go at almost any time. And something that's been really helpful is just having like a slideshow or like a little document with all of our progress for that semester or what we've done so far with the club, what our ultimate goal is, so that when somebody comes in on a random day just to join the club, you can be like, hey, this is everything we've done. And that's really helpful. Sorry, I don't know. Sorry. And then yeah, in terms of preseason, just working on building new skills in terms of stuff you're building. If you guess the game piece or the type of game correctly, it can be really helpful in the actual season because you can almost just copy that same design. Um, Giving challenges to newer members on your team is something really interesting. I know when I was a sophomore, one of my favorite experiences was my preseason. The seniors just gave us a design challenge based on what they thought the game would be. And we designed a whole, we catted something out and we started building it. We didn't finish it, but it turned out to be useful in actually making our robot the next year. So yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I know you mentioned some things about your team's sustainability. So does your team have like a specific sustainability plan on your FRC team or your current Rice or on your current Rice Robotics team?
What do you mean by that?
Like how does your team make sure that like it just doesn't stop at one end, right? And like everyone quits. Like how do you like publicize your team to make sure that people keep joining and that like once people graduate, more people are there?
So yeah, a big part of that is the making sure that the newer members know what they're doing. I know in my FRC team, one of the issues that we had was one of the years, all of our seniors didn't really care about the other people and they kind of built the robot by themselves. And that caused the rest of us to kind of be clueless and kind of struggle the next year. Um, so a big part of it, I'd say, is involving newer members and teaching them the things that you know so that in the future they're more likely to kind of be more willing and able to help out. And then also in terms of advertising, um, for our FRC team, we had a club fair and mostly what we did was we would just advertise it around our school. Um, we would take our robot out to events. So like there was a pep rally on campus and we just took the robot and we drove it around the track. During the club fair or different activities fairs at our schools, we'd take the robot out and we'd have like posters and stuff. Um, our coaches would send like mass emails to the school, like, oh, like the robotics season is starting if you're interested in joining. And I think the same thing kind of happens here. There's plenty of showcases and like club fairs in college. And I'd say like within the first week, everybody kind of joins like a lot of group meets and they just keep sending messages about like what's going on, just keep like sending out flyers, stuff like that to get people's interest.
Yeah, okay. So I see you guys have like a pretty large network in college. That must be really nice. Um, Arya, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I just had one more on my side. So, what are some, like you mentioned in FRC that some of your senior members gave you a design challenge that helped you improve your skills? In Rice Robotics, what is like your guys' method of training students, whether it's like code or electrical or wiring, of how to improve their skills, especially for new recruits?
I guess then I can talk a little bit because I'm an electrical lead on BattleBots, as we said before. Um, in terms of teaching other people what to do, we Rice Robotics as a whole actually has like um a kind of robotics weekend where everybody learns to make one small and simple bot that contains a lot of essential things to know. So like that's the mechanical components, the electrical components, and also the coding. So we have something with like a little ultrasonic sensor on top and Arduino straps in back and a couple motors. So people learn at least about connecting the wires and gluing things on, making sure the whole structure is stable. And then after that, they can connect their code up to it, and then they just do a little bit of coding to make sure that the bot doesn't like fall off a table or something like that. And so that's something that Rice Robotics as a whole kind of does for new members or for anybody who's willing to do that. And in terms of the actual like divisions, for example, for BattleBots, we start off with kind of showing people how to CAD. There's also, I'm pretty sure, CAD weeks, things like that. And then we just try to make sure that we have a lot of aid for anyone who needs to do anything. Like I know personally, I actually didn't know that much CAD. Even in FRC, I was more of a just kind of build it and make it work. I mean, I guess it kind of worked for me, but that doesn't really work when you're trying to 3D print something, right? So I kind of learned through CAD weeks on my own, and then through aid from other people. Like, hey, mechanical lead, how do I do this in CAD? And then they help me with that. And so in terms of electrics, that's kind of what I did, where I kind of figured out how to do all the electrical things by myself over a break. And then after that, I was able to help other people. I was able to create like a wiring diagram and then share that with everyone. And then when people needed help connecting things together, I'd be able to help them with that. Like, how do I solder this? What does this part of the wiring diagram mean? So yeah, that's kind of how we make sure that everybody gets the skills that they need.
Yes, I can talk more. I'm Echelon Martinez. I'm from Team 7418. I'm local. I'm more based on like Rice electrical vehicle, but we have also an electrical sub team. And all of our preseason, we focus on workshops. So we started off with like PCB design where we organize our circuits. Everyone learned how to solder, what Arduinos are, Raspberry Pis, and just kind of figure out like the basic skills. So everyone starts off with the same foot. And once we start like our season, we can all plan and we all have like a concept of like the base of knowledge, so we can all kind of discuss and work out the best design for our vehicle. So I think workshops are like the most important part.
Yeah, I really love how your team like gives everyone a strong base of knowledge and what they're doing. So I have one last question for you guys. So, if there was one takeaway that you got from your experience at first, and what would that be?
Does everybody want to go? Who wants to go first?
If you want, all of you guys could answer this question, or one of you, anything works.
I think so.
I can go first.
Okay.
I guess my takeaway from first is just getting to like meet with people, learn about like things I never learned before. So like every time I go to the World Championship at Houston, I'd like go up to like every team's pit, ask them questions about their design, how they programmed like maybe this specific thing we didn't get to implement in like autonomous, for example, and then like ask them like, hey, how did you do this? And they're always like usually so helpful. And I've met a great number of people from other teams from first that I still talk to this day. So like previous like team scout captains that like we aligned with in Worlds or like just online off like Chief Delphi or something. Like it's pretty helpful to build like that people skill. And I think that's one takeaway can have. I met so many nice people from first. So yeah.
I think mine is almost the same. It's just like the community. I know I was really excited to come here and kind of like continue my experience in robotics, and I got here and obviously I met a lot of people who have been in first, and it was just really exciting to be like, oh, you did robotics too, like what's your team? Like what kind of strategies did you use? And I think it's just a really good community. I still talk to the kids who are still in my high school on the team, like friends I'll keep for life and all. And it's like, I think it can also be like a good kind of networking thing almost. It's like a big community of people with the alumni and everything. Like it'll stay with you forever. I went on vacation somewhere. I was in like Europe and I saw this lady with a first shirt and I had a whole conversation with her. Like you just like it's the community, I think, for me.
Yeah, I think like we have a lot of recruiters here, like on career fair, and they see first, and then they just want to talk to you. Like I think it puts your foot into the door. But for me, I would say also community. And I think first really grows your mindset as an engineer or just like innovator, because you get to have those conversations with people that think differently from you. So when you go to like the championships here in Houston, you get to see like everyone's perspective and you kind of pick up and you like put it in the back of your head. And then once you go back into the drawing board, you have all these new concepts that you can apply to your new design. And I think that's very useful, not only just for competition, but as you move on in your career as well.
Yeah. I second everything that they've already said. The community is great. Finding out people that you know who also did first is great. Actually, the president of Rice Robotics Club actually won the 2019 championships for FRC. Pretty crazy. I actually just realized that like very recently. I think for me, it was kind of a really big learning experience in a lot of different aspects in terms of how something kind of big comes together and works, because there's a lot of different teams that you kind of have to get to work all together, right? There's mechanical, electrical, there's business, marketing, social media, whatever else. And overall, there's just a lot of things that you get to learn in terms of how all of these gears mesh together along with your individual skills. And given that it's such like a practical challenge, there's just so many other little intangible things that you might not even consider that are just really big takeaways. Like even just talking with other people on different alliances, that's like communication or like strategy, right? Each game has its own strategy. How do you decide something? How do you drive something? How do you optimize something? How do you optimize different teams talking together and getting things done on schedule? Honestly, it's just such the challenge is such kind of a real world challenge that I feel like in terms of anybody on a robotics team, they can like learn very, very important skills. And I think that's like one of the biggest takeaways. Why I thought it was like one of the most important and fun things that I did in my high school career, and why I still like to do robotics here.
That is definitely true. FTC and First in General is a very fun experience. Thank you so much for your guys' valuable words of advice and your takeaways from the first community. And we'd love to meet with you again in the future and stay in touch with you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's great
Thank you so
meeting you.
much. Have a nice day.
You too.
Yeah.